anybody there? Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, I think we're here now.
There you go. I see ya. Hey, good.
How's it going? Thanks for having me. How's the audio? Okay.
Oh, the audio is beautiful. It is sublime, actually. It is really, really good.
This is the setup I've been using for 750 1-hour live streams.
Oh my word. So you're a machine.
I never took it down. Oh, I wasn't going anywhere.
Still a lot of effort nonetheless, and I guess I must say thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And I got to give you a shout out here for the Norm shirt that you have there.
Oh, and it's for me, it's a big deal because the first time I got big press for what I was doing during COVID.
Yeah.
The article was supposed to come out. I'll save some anecdotes.
Okay.
But the article was supposed to come out on the 20th anniversary of September 11th, which I thought, okay, that's
not exactly timely.
But it's not like I'm doing jokes, you know.
Sure,
well, I do,
sure.
but it's irrelevant. And the story got bumped for space, and it ended up coming out on the same day that Norm's passing was on the front page. And so I still have a copy of the paper here somewhere.
Oh my
goodness. It changed everything. It was like, because my wife and I met through comedy. So,
yeah,
it's a big, you know, it's crucial to us. You know, we were worried that like, oh my God, well, if our kid's not funny, that problem solved itself. As one tweet said, I'm not going to fake laugh in my own house for 18 years. But it was like, oh yeah, thanks for the article, I appreciate it. But Norm, oh my God, it's on the front. And you know, and then, oh yeah, by the way, here's my article in the back next to Hagar the Horrible and the crossword. But like it just upstaged in my own head, you know, that particular bit of press.
Right. Yeah, it was big fan of Norm. I really enjoy his style, and definitely a sad day for a lot of folks. Including myself. So if it's all right, do you mind if we start at the beginning? Just to kind of get a little bit of context, and I'm really excited to get to hear more about your time in Second City, but of course about your COVID project, which just sounds like a beautiful piece of you know, excitement for us to get straight to our homes and living rooms. So
happy accident, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So let's start about, I guess, music and comedy, right? Because those are going to be at the very beginning of your life, if I'm imagining correctly.
Yeah. It's the music was sort of. I'll start with the music came first. I probably thought I was funny long before I was anywhere in the vicinity of being funny, but. And to preface the Second City thing, I was the musician. I was not a performer. I performed, but on the piano.
Yeah. There's comedy in there too. There's timing and good stuff there too.
Yeah, but there was also a reason they didn't give me a mic. But the music stuff started with me. For a long story shortish, probably 3-4 years old. My dad graduated, did his PhD in chemistry in London, Ontario. We moved to Sarnia, Ontario, about an hour from Detroit, across the river from Port Huron. And that's where our Chemical Valley is, with all the industry. So I wound up living there. And our neighbors in the townhouse what we rented had an upright piano. And I'm told I would go over there and I would say bang on their piano, except that they said, oh, he doesn't bang on the piano. It sounds like he's trying to work things out, like trying to play melodies and stuff. And so my mom ended up bartering babysitting for piano lessons with a friend of hers. And the friend was a pretty basic player, I guess, because very quickly she said, you should take him to a proper teacher. I ended up studying with a classical teacher named Margaret Alcock, who I was lucky enough for my wife to meet late in life. Margaret was already 50 when I met her. And she gave me my classical piano lessons, which is why I can read music pretty easily, which has been great. The reading it isn't as crucial to jazz, I would say, as for classical, but it meant that I could accompany people and pay my way through college a bit by accompanying singers and horn players for their recitals, that sort of thing.
Right.
And we moved to Louisiana. My dad got transferred to their Chemical Valley because down south, the Chemical Valley is from Baton Rouge all the way over to Galveston, Texas.
Mm.
And he worked down there for a couple of years, plastics, my boy. And he was there, and a couple of things happened. One, I studied with a piano teacher who was a bit more liberal about other styles. And when I expressed an interest in jazz, she didn't have that, but she had ragtime. So I learned some ragtime piano. I can still, this is all wired. I can actually,
beautiful.
I did not learn the Scott Joplin, that everybody always, the Sting, the entertainer.
Right.
It was she taught me some from a book by another guy. I've not met many people who've heard of him, named Tom Turpin. I think it was from Missouri. I butchered it, but I still remember the melody. And
Beautiful.
that was that was veering towards jazz. But what really did it early on, and it didn't change my life at the moment, but it was that here where I live, if you in Toronto, the kids, hey, we're going on a field trip. Where are you going? You go to the Science Center. You go to Chudley's apple farm to go apple picking. You might go pumpkin picking outside the city. If you're in Baton Rouge, you go on a field trip, you go to New Orleans, because if the bus driver's got a lead foot, you're there in an hour and 15 minutes.
Wow. Talk about an upgrade there.
Yeah, it was pretty sweet. And two things happen, and this isn't a story I share on stage when it's an older crowd, but I think what happened is I saw two things happen. It was, I think some cults call it imprinting. I heard live jazz on the street in the city where it was created within the same 15 minutes that I saw inside the open doors on Bourbon Street of topless bars.
Oh my goodness.
And I think in my head, I associated them forever and thought, oh, one gets you the other. And usually that's why people start playing guitar, I think. So I'm told by guitarists. But it left a mark.
Talk about a core memory. Yeah,
it's a pretty fundamental one. And then we came back from Baton Rouge to Sarnia, and I was in Sarnia until I was 22. And the jazz playing didn't happen, but my mom had acquired some jazz records. I remember Al Hurt, he's the king, jazz trumpet player. That was a heck of a record for me. It was very eclectic, though, because I early on just listened to my mom's albums, didn't know how to put an antenna on the FM radio, so heard a bit of talk and local radio.
Yeah.
And I listened to my mom's albums, which included the original concept album, with the brown cover of Jesus Christ Superstar, which is a rockin' score.
Yeah.
And what else? Bachman Turner Overdrive, who south of the border, you probably mostly know for Taking Care of Business, but they had another album called Four Wheel Drive that's probably even heavier rock. I don't know how she veered into this, because the other albums were collections of Bach and Mozart from Time Life Records, and Cat Stevens' Tea for the Tillerman with The Morning Has Broken on it. And then Cat comes in with Morning Has Broke, not in my key, obviously. But I just found out during the pandemic that it's Rick Wakeman, the keyboard player from Yes, is the guy playing piano on that track. Yeah, there's not much piano on the record, and as soon as you know that, and then you listen to it again, you're like, oh, well, of course, it screams that. But as a kid, I had no idea. I didn't know who Yes was for another few years. I met a kid in grade 8, 2 years after we came back, named Brian. He was the rock guitar player in the one rock band in the school. And his dad was also our grade 8 teacher, who was fabulous. And Brian showed me how to, he lent me some cool albums, because I had come back with a couple of disco albums, which were deemed dead by the time we got back to Canada. And one is and one wasn't. One was Go West by the Village People. It wasn't even the one with YMCA on it. And because I saw them on a Bob Hope special where he's on one of those, he's on a battleship entertaining the troops, and young Brooke Shields is with him. and out come the Village People, exactly the group you expect on a battleship. But the other one was Spirits Having Flown by the Bee Gees with Tragedy and Too Much Heaven on the record, because I'd seen them on a UNICEF TV special, and that album stands the test of time. That album's stunning. I didn't know any keyboard players in pop music, so I would say that they were, who's your favorite keyboard player? Well, I don't know what a keyboard is. I can only play piano, and that's probably true to this day. I can barely turn on this thing. I'm not a synth guy, so it was like, who's your favorite keyboard player? Well, who's the keyboard player on the last album that somebody gave me? So for a while it was Blue Weaver, this, I think, Welsh guy who's on the Bee Gees record. And the other one was, after a while, a kid named Alan Gillespie in grade 8 or grade 7 befriended me as the kid who just come back from the States. I think they thought I was American. And he lent me Discovery by ELO, Electric Light Orchestra, with Don't Bring Me Down was the big tune on that.
Yeah.
And so for a while it was, Richard Tandy is my favorite keyboard player because his name was on the record and I like the record. So, and these guys, I still love these guys. They're still, those two albums are still great.
Yeah. But so formative. I mean, there's such a sense of eclectic tastes sort of formulating. Is this something that you eventually had to use as you were performing? Just being comfortable going across so many styles and different approaches.
Well, these tunes did wind up coming back into my life, but it was a long road. I'm 55 now. The pandemic started when I was 50. How does this work? Was I 52? I guess 51 or 52.
Yeah.
And I had been toying with an idea maybe a year or two prior of reworking the tunes from my own youth into jazz arrangements. And not in, I'm adverse to, I'm always worried about it sounding cheesy. So somebody mentioned the
jukebox musical sort of thing.
No. The group that's on YouTube where they'll have they do it very swingy and there'll be female singers wearing postmodern jukebox.
Yes. And
I'm not cute enough on camera for that. And also it's of a certain era. It's fairly traditional jazz. And I don't care what era of jazz, I'm sticking on the tune. I just want to rework it. So things like, I realized at some point that Don't Bring Me Down, except for the part where they go to the minor key. Do you know the tune? It's like,
yeah.
You got me running away, dude. But it's also, the verse is just like a 12-bar blues. You got me running, going out of my mind. You got me thinking that I'm wasting my time. Don't bring me down. There's your 4 chords, so it's blues. I tell you once more before I get off the floor, don't bring me down. 12, 2, 3, 4. And there's another section to the tune. But as soon as I realized that, it was like, I could treat this like a 12-bar blues with some extra cool, I call them like Steely Dan chords. Yeah. Like they're too hip for the room chords that still they're reinventing the blues a bit just for a couple of bars there.
Well, that's amazing that there was that swagger already in the song, and all you needed to do is just kind of formulate a little bit more to bring that to the forefront again. But that is the song. That is sort of the spirit of the song in a way.
Yeah, I don't want to change the meaning or the intent. It's just, it's a different mood.
Yeah.
And also I love it if it lends itself to swinging. I won't play them all, but some other tunes that, one I've been doing forever is like, if you're younger than me, but there was Ian Thomas is a bit of a Canadian icon, and he wrote tunes that were covered by the band America, did his tune, just like Rudolph Valentino, something that Right Before Your Eyes. And the big one, The Runner by Manfred Mann is his. And these are all tunes he put on albums of his own for the most part, I like his versions the best. But then other people cover them. And one of them was Santana covered his version of Hold On. And it's a 4 on the floor rocker. And,
Yeah.
Hold On. Is that my key? Just
oh, I know that one. Yeah.
Hold on. Nothing's the same. Tell me why I feel this way. And it's boom, boom. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And if you watch SCTV, because his brother Dave Thomas is one of the guys from SCTV.
Oh, okay.
He guests on it with his band, with a bass player who's not on the album, but I actually play with regularly. And and it's this rockin' 4 on the floor tune. And I started noodling on it as a tell me why I feel this way. And my wife is still, I think it's still my wife's favorite of my reinvented pop tunes. So I do it like every show. There's that Huey Lewis, I Want a New Drug. It turns out it swings like crazy.
Yeah.
There's a Glenn Fry. I'm big on the Eagles. I'm a huge Eagles fan, but it always seems like the tunes I want to rework from my childhood, from my youth, that are from the Eagles guys are from their solo records. So I've got something off Don Henley's End of the Innocents. I've got Glenn Fry, but his ballad, The One You Love. And Joel Walsh, Life's Been Good to Me So Far, actually works in it. It all kind of falls together.
You have the Eagles in spirit there assembled.
Yeah, they're and it's a goofy little high point, because I know it's just social media and people pop in and click like and don't remember. But my two favorites when I would, and this is before COVID, when I was just at my wife's behest, because she's in marketing, she's like, content, go down, do something.
Yeah.
It was, I would put up 1-minute clips of these tunes on Instagram. Here's what I did with this tune. And for My Life by Billy Joel, which I started to turn into a funkier New Orleans kind of thing, his guitar player, who currently tours with him, liked it and made my day.
Yeah.
And then Glenn Fry's son clicked like on my version of the Glenn Fry tune. It was it was just really touching. I guess checking. I think I put it up because it was his late dad's birthday. So he was probably looking for like birthday tributes and found mine.
Emotional day. Right.
Yeah, it was cool.
So I guess I'm curious about how you go about building a performance, or if there's any kind of structure to the way that you do a live show. And I want to ask you about the recordings as well, but just specifically about performance. Now that you've been doing this for a while, what does that look like for you?
It's very, very different than before COVID. I didn't start singing, with one exception, and the exception is the reason I never did it again. I didn't get a singing lesson until I was 49, turning 50. And the reason was, when I was I realized as 50 was approaching that I'd been talking about learning to sing at my 40th birthday party with a friend. And I reconnected with the friend and realized, oh yeah, it's been 10 years I never did that thing. And the friend is a voice teacher, Louisa, terrific. And I mentioned this, and I was like 49 and a half, more closer to 50. And she goes, well, come over here right now for a lesson. And I was like, oh, I'll get over there. She's like, no, what are you doing right now? And I said, well, talking to you. She's going, do you have any appointments for the next 2 hours? And I said, well, no. She goes, if you don't do it right now, you're going to be talking about this at your 60th birthday party, and you still won't have done it. So I got in the car and I went over and I had my first voice lesson. And I think she's like, what do you know? Sing something you know. And so I did Rainbow Connection, my all-time favorite pop song.
Oh, beautiful.
I have photos of my daughter at age 5. She's 12 now, sitting with the composer at Birdland, the club in New York.
Oh, my goodness.
Kenny Asher, Paul Williams wrote the lyrics. Kenny Asher wrote the music. And despite all his success, he still plays every Friday night with the Birdland Big Band. I think it's from 5 till 7. And so they met him. But I did the tune, and honestly, probably sounded more like Kermit the Frog than anybody else covering the tune. And so it was a lot of sound production. I understand music. It was making the right sort of noise come out of my head was the issue. And by about week before my 50th birthday, I achieved the goal of going to a senior's home, and I dragged my bass player around. I think I paid him on a pocket just because I was so self-conscious. I didn't want to be up there by myself. And it's a local senior's home. I'd played at for years, just to entertain folks. But I'd always dragged friends with me because instrumental music for, I would say, more than half of the audience, instrumental music doesn't connect the same way. And this is something I've learned. And I don't mean any offense to instrumental musicians. I mean, I that's all I did for years and loved it. But for civilians, we'll call them, for non-musicians, people that aren't deep into the genre, it can seem like background music.
Yeah.
And I wanted to keep their attention. I mean, they're the audience. They're right. They want what they want. And if I could sing every other song, 6 songs out of 12 for these folks, I could go over and entertain these folks that my daughter and I visited on the regular by myself without having to rope somebody else into going with me to be the foreground entertainer. So, and I did it. I got together 6 tunes with the help of Louisa and another vocal coach, Amanda, and I nervously got through it and did Days of Wine and Roses and, all of me, why not take what? That's way too, all of me, why not take all of me? Real American songbook tunes.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, I looked at my bass player friend, Peter Telford, who is very, very funny and keeps my ego in check. And I said, well, we're at the senior's home, and I said, well, nobody walked out. And he just looks at me and he says, yeah, to be fair, most of them couldn't. That's one of my 2 favorites from him. About a year later, I was actually doing a proper gig where we'd been booked. And I said, I can't believe I'm getting paid to sing. And he said, well, they're paying you to play. They're letting you sing. I bring this up to him and he's embarrassed. I'm like, no, it's hilarious. It's like,
beautiful.
I don't know. I hung around enough comedians that nothing's funnier to me than somebody being roasted, even if it's me. So
you just jump into the environment, you adapt. But you mentioned 2 things that I really wanted to talk to you about. The first one is this idea of how I had never thought about this for non-civilian or civilians, as you said.
Yeah.
They need that sort of magnet, that anchor to guide them, and that's what the vocals and maybe the lyrics are. Like they need a way in to the music.
It is lyrics, and I would say it's lyrics because of this. Wordless. There's some great wordless vocal in some jazz where you just treat the voice as a horn. And I don't even mean scatting, like, Scooby Dooby Doo, Sinatra. I don't mean to belittle it. I just can't do it. And I don't need to do it because if I'm playing a tune, I sing the tune. My outlet to improvise, I don't have to scat because I play piano. So my expression for improvising is I play a piano solo. And I'm impressed by people that can scat well. But I think people want the words, because if you think of the music that is considered high art, elitist, in a good way, but a lot of folks don't connect. It's jazz, classical, and opera, which I suppose falls under small c, classical. But opera, and the response I get is, well, opera has lyrics. I'm like, yeah, but how many people understand them? I mean, Italian I think is considered the primo, no pun intended, the primo language for it, because so many of the words end in vowels, so you can sustain them, and a consonant you'd have to end it. So the language, there's vocals, but it's not, people aren't connecting to the lyric unless they're really educated in that particular opera or speak the language. And I think most folks want to connect on a human level, and that human level is your voice and the lyrics. And you draw them in differently. The comedy thing comes to mind because I noticed the first time I did a show, like a proper, like a club show, and the folks are there to see me as opposed to it being background. And it was the first time I sang and made it a big part of that kind of show. The jokes and the patter in between were getting bigger laughs. And I think what it is that it wasn't like we played instrumentally for 5 minutes and now I got to get them back. I never lost them because I'd just been singing, so I had them drawn in. So going from the song to some patter wasn't, hey, over here, we're done the song. Can I get your attention again, please? Wow. It was, we were already talking. We were already having a conversation.
So it's sort of two modes of listening, right? When it's instrumental, it seems like they naturally shut off a little bit or sort of remove themselves, whereas the lyrics make them active listeners. Like it gives the brain something else to kind of hone in on.
Yeah, and instrumental music, I mean, you might be speaking a language they don't speak. So how would you expect them to sit there if somebody
Mm,
came into me and was speaking, Greek to me, and I don't speak Greek, not a stitch. And how sincerely can I sit there and listen if I don't know what the words mean?
mm-hmm.
So if it's not a music, my wife doesn't, she sings beautifully, but and doesn't do it enough, if you ask me. But doesn't play. She says she's not a musician. Um, uh, I would argue that, but that's another story. Um, and so when she listens to stuff that even I don't enjoy terribly, and I'll do my usual joke about, like people come up and it's like, oh, I don't usually like jazz, but I like what you do. And my thoughts on that are generally like, well, I know what kind of jazz they've heard. I can
Mm-hmm.
just imagine. And my joke is typically that they heard somebody making animal noises through a saxophone. In which there are lots of chaotic types of jazz.
Yeah.
I would say chaotic. You could use your own adjective, but I think we know this sort of jazz we're talking to is a million beats per minute.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of squeals and sounds that you wouldn't necessarily be able to pick out on another instrument.
Mm-hmm.
But my wife will appreciate some of that stuff on a level that I can't, because she's
Mm.
been listening to it her whole life. It's like the way I hear Cat Stevens and some endorphins go off because of my childhood. It's like that for
Yeah.
her. Um, the most the moment where I really went, oh yeah, something's off here, was a dinner with a guitar player friend, and my wife and I were guests, and there were three other couples. And one of them said, "Oh, it's the guitarist's home." Like it's so you would expect an extra level of guest etiquette.
Mm.
And they said, "There's a piano there." And we had a recording act a few years prior, and they said, well, "Why don't you guys play one of your songs?" So I'm like, okay, the piano's right there. I sit at the piano. He gets his guitar, and he's the host, and he's doing a song that he wrote. Within 12 bars, the whole table's talking again.
Huh.
It's an instrumental song. They're not, I think in their minds, they're not interrupting anything by talking because there's no voice. There's no lyrics. They're not missing, to them, they're not missing anything by talking.
Yeah.
But of course, us doing it, I was kind of like, that was a moment where I'm like, something started to,
Yeah.
I started,
So
I
fascinating.
couldn't phrase it, all these things I'm saying as words yet, as ideas yet. But that's where a light started to go off there.
Yeah.
Mind you, if we were doing that in front of folks that had heard the album on smooth jazz radio, which is what it was,
Mm.
almost easy listening, but groovy, then that would have been different. We have held audiences with this same song, but these aren't people that had come to our shows, or
Mm-hmm.
bought the albums.
Yeah.
So you have to have already won them over to get them to sit and listen quietly, I
Right.
think, to the instrumental music. So
Yeah. And so I'm curious to know of the work that has gone into the albums, with that sort of information. And of course, with the kind of curating that has to happen for you to put together these beautiful albums, which they're going to be part of my rotation. I just really appreciate your arrangements. And I think they were just a delight.
oh, thank you.
Um,
I call
I,
those, if they're the ones I'm thinking of, I call them the Lenny albums. Is it Lenny Jumps In and Songs My Daughter Knows?
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are both you don't get I'll send you the liner notes, but my favorite part of those was writing the stories about how the songs connect to my daughter and
Oh,
I.
wonderful. Yeah.
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 Lenny is her name. Lenny Jumps In jumping in is what she used to call playing make believe when she was little,
Oh,
because you jump into another reality, another world.
oh man.
And, but the thing was, my loving and patient wife, Lenny was always still Lenny, and my wife had to be every other character in that world. So she did the heavy
Yeah.
lifting. Well, all
Yeah.
Lenny had to do was jump in.
Right. Right.
And then Songs My Daughter Knows is literally that. The Lenny Jumps In one is mostly my own writing, and Songs My Daughter Knows was the songs that her and I had a connection with.
Yeah.
Uh, and Rainbow Connection was the first song I ever played for her when we brought her home from the hospital. The T for Two is on that record because that's what I instinctively started humming to her as I bounced her to calm her when she was
That's
little.
beautiful.
And so automatically that I'm like, why did I pick that tune? I don't even play that tune. Not really.
Yeah.
And I called my mom and I'm like, did you hum me T for Two? And she's like, no, I don't even know if I can hum the whole thing. And so to this day, I don't know why I picked that tune to hum to my kid when she was a
That's
baby.
fascinating.
So
And I love, as a parent myself, I just love this.
you have a boy, right?
I have a boy. Yeah, he's 10
How
years.
old?
He's 9. He's
Oh,
going to be 10. So he's
nice.
right at that beautiful age where he's sure still playing, but he has a lot of opinions. He knows exactly what he wants now because, he's going to be 10. But I love this relationship that you obviously as a dad. How does this inform the work that you're doing now and that you've done? Because it seems like it had a tremendous impact on your musical work, based on what you're describing now.
Well, in the most literal sense, it's why this whole piano bar thing happened. Um, in you may have already read this in some of the stuff I sent when we first started talking, but I had rolled our upright piano. It's not too tall. It wasn't going to tip. I rolled it in the dining room because the dining room is more attractive than the back room where it usually sits, to shoot a video for an organization here in Canada that was putting out a newsletter and wanted some videos of Canadian artists playing Canadian tunes. So I said I could do and they paid a little bit. There was some grant money and they were trying to help artists keep busy during what we were promised was a 3-week lockdown. And so I said I could do, well, Ian Thomas is Canadian and I do this jazz arrangement of this tune. They said, great. I'm like, well, do you want to hear a demo? They said, oh no, just do it and send it. I'm like, oh, I won't say no. Okay. Rolled the piano in. So it's in front of the nice paisley curtain, the damask curtains, not paisley. I was corrected on that. And did a 2-camera shoot and put it together. And the piano's still sitting there. So, and there it sits for a while. And then to entertain my daughter and I, after about a week, we did a couple of Ask Me Anythings. So not Reddit style. We just went on Facebook Live on my page and said, we're going to go live at 2, ask us anything. And so we sat there and it was just our chums saying, Lenny, what's your favorite thing about your dad? And, what's his goofiest tick? And she had answers to all of these. So at her fingertips so readily, I was like, did you prepare this? And then we did that twice. And then for the third one, I said, well, why don't we do this from behind the piano and we can answer questions and take song requests. So she had the tablet and she's like, oh, so-and-so's asking this. And I would, what about this song? And by the way, what's your favorite, whatever. And we did it again the next day. And cause it was fun. And then the third day we're sitting around in the evening, just chilling. And somebody emails me and says, hey, aren't you guys on again? Aren't you guys on tonight? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I guess we could do that. We're not doing, we're stuck at home. So we went over and did it. And we did it the next night and the next night. And then it wound up being 150 nights in a row before we took a night off.
Oh my word.
Yeah. But really, it's the piano's right there. I eventually added bits of tech and initially it was my laptop, my MacBook Air. The camera wasn't that great. So we used my wife's iPhone and then we added a mic and then I added a little interface from Roland that lets you plug 2 mics into it, but it goes into your phone. So I could mic the piano separately. And, eventually now, I upgraded with the help of the viewers because I set up a Patreon to do this. It started crashing the iPhone software and Facebook software. The audio would go out halfway through. So I'd have to reboot. And I'm like, I should suck it up and get one of the new Macs. And I got a Mac Mini and I'm looking at you through a mirrorless DSLR from Sony, but everything all was like the cheapest I could find because I'm cheap. And I've got I'm at a digital piano now in the basement now. Which actually, to be honest, if I have to take a good acoustic piano through a cheap mic or a digital piano with the direct inputs going into the mixer, a good digital piano is going to sound better just because you're not dealing with microphone issues. And honestly, I don't think it's not like I've got, heavy audio engineers Well, one friend does, and he can tell, but the folks, it does the job.
But they're
And
not blasting you in the comments to say, "Hey, you gotta pick it up a notch" or anything, because
yeah,
they're
I think the sample they use for your A is from a Bosendorfer piano and not a Steinway. It's like, I don't know.
It's like, we're here to have fun. Yeah.
As if I could tell. I just play the piano. So, but you asked about how Lenny influences it. Lenny, the whole thing was inspired as a way to entertain my kid and us do something together.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was, for months and months, sat with me to my left, whether she was looking at comments or just reading a book or sketching, which has become her artistic outlet during the pandemic. I got her a couple of online lessons from outschool.com, which I think was meant for homeschooling parents to trade off duties. You teach history, I'll teach math.
Right.
And I think during the pandemic, if I don't know if you could have stock in that company, but if you did, holy cow. I mean, we're all at home looking at the internet. It was great for like drawing lessons and such. And she's gotten very, very good at it. But once school started again, she did grade 5 virtually, so she could stay up a bit late because it only took 2 minutes to get from 1 minute to get from bed to school. And she still hung out with me, and the viewers all knew her and knew our story. Sometimes she'd come down and she'd be in complete cosplay and be completely unrecognizable. Yeah, they knew my cat that we had when it started, and that cat JJ passed away in November, election night, U.S. election night, actually.
Oh, wow.
And I think I was wishing for a distraction, and I think I wished on a monkey's paw or something, because that's not what I meant. Wound up taking him to the vet.
Oh, goodness.
And then adopted a new cat. Much to my shock, like 6 weeks later, we had a new cat because somebody in the neighborhood needed to rehome him really quickly. And he's been with us since, and all the viewers knew JJ, and now they know Fry.
Yeah.
JJ, sometimes they come and sit, like they'll get up on the piano, so it's kind of entertaining. I
mean, that's fascinating. Excuse me. The way that folks immediately gravitate to just like the most humane parts of you, and it is very much opening the door and letting so many folks in. Do you worry about that, or is that a surreal feeling that excuse me, you can't get accustomed to, or is that not a preoccupation of yours?
Do you mean like folks getting too intimate, like getting too close? Or almost everyone's been lovely. I have got and this has become part of a keynote I'm working on, because I've been asked to speak to some groups virtually, and I'm hoping to do it live, about life lessons from the piano bar. And but I did, there was a fellow that emailed early on way too much. I assume just lonely and a little intense. And if I had to handle that again now, I would just be, hey, thanks for the note and thanks for listening, and just you trust your instincts a little more. And it escalated and into some crazy stuff online, and a friend of his, and this is my fault, but as basically I discovered two things early on, and if anybody that can, and well, with your podcast, perhaps you've run it, or your work as a playwright, anybody that's known by more than a couple of dozen strangers is going to wind up with some degree of stalker at some point. And the other thing I learned is that I somehow put my personal cell phone number on my Facebook page when I started it. So I started getting I started getting WhatsApp. I got a phone call, didn't recognize the country code, and then I started getting WhatsApp messages from Colombia. And it wasn't even for that guy. It was like from a friend of his, and they got mad at one of my in real life friends at some point and started threatening him in the chats, but it was in Spanish and it won't translate for me in real time. So I didn't know till the end of the show. So I ended up I did have to ban a couple of people, because my friend was like, oh, whatever, they're 5,000 kilometers away.
Sure. But
I'm like, yeah, but perfectly nice folks who just wanted to relax are seeing what they're saying in the feed. So they got to go. But honestly, other folks, it's been, they were basically been lovely. One of the reasons it went 150 nights in a row when it started was that after, I don't know, after a month or so, I was like, yeah, I should just give myself a night off. And then I got a message, a direct message from a nurse, I want to say in Peru. And she was writing to thank me for helping her get through her shifts at work.
Oh,
And her
wow.
shifts at work were as 12-hour shifts as a nurse in a COVID unit.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm like, if she can do that for 12 hours, I can play for 1 hour. And that's why it kept going without a night off for as long as it did. Like if people were posting, so like, everyone's putting signs up in their windows and paying tribute to their frontline workers. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I can move to the piano for 1 hour if
Mm.
it helps this lady do her job. So,
Oh, that's beautiful.
there was some stuff with Facebook where I lost some messages, and if Facebook was like, try our new format for our page, and Facebook could be a bother for these things,
Yeah.
where I'm like, okay, I'll try the new look of the new page. And I did it for 2 weeks, and there was an issue with it in relation to how I work. So I went, I'm going to go back to the old format.
Mm.
And when I went back to the old format, all the messages from that window of time were gone. So
Yeah.
I've always wanted to follow up with her and find out, like, how she did with her shifts, that she got through it happy and healthy,
Yeah.
or at least healthy. And I don't, I would have liked to have stayed in touch with her, but I
Yeah.
don't, I couldn't.
But that's a remarkable impact that is happening. I mean, to be able to go at one point, I mean, you gained 30,000 new online followers in the span of these performances. And how was that? I mean, you kind of explained how insane that was, but the impact is what baffles me about this, that you were having on folks during this difficult time and those
Well,
personal stories.
I've asked folks I've had folks ask, like, how did you do that? How can I do that? I'm like, it was a fluke. It was a perfect storm.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I was doing it on my Facebook page, my own Facebook page, and thought, well, let's move it to my music page. That's sort of underused. It had like 250 followers. I didn't really
Mm-hmm.
do anything with it. It was mostly there so corporate event planners could find me if they wanted to hire me to play at their company dinner or something.
Mm-hmm.
Again, all instrumental music back then. And
Yeah.
so it was good for background. And we moved it to that page and made it made the link a tip jar for Glad Day Bookstore. Glad Day Bookstore is in Toronto. It's, I believe, the oldest existing LGBTQ bookstore in the world.
Mm.
And it's gone through a few owners. And it's on Sunday, it was my daughter's happy place because they have drag brunches there
Oh.
on Sundays. And she's gotten to know the various queens. She's pals with the one that won Drag Race Canada.
Oh, wow.
I got a photo of her losing her mind when Priyanka won. It was pretty great. And if Glad Day had an emergency fund, and it was very, very cool. It was to help them get through and not go out of business.
Yeah.
But they were also doing $500 grants and subsidies to arts workers and tip workers in the community, in their community, in the village. People think of the gay community in Toronto as being centered around this intersection that's right near where they are, and a lot of marginalized folks to begin with. So they were doing a lot of good and making sure they stayed open, because if there wasn't a drag brunch on Sundays when we got through COVID, then what did we do it for?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because my kid would be miserable, Lenny would be miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put up I didn't want to handle the money. It's like, here, if you like the music, click this link and donate to Glad Day. And after a few weeks, it was like, I think anybody that's going to has.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we should try to get some new viewers. So I'm just like, for like $50, you can get a bunch of,
Like
run a
ads
bunch of
to-
Facebook ads
Yeah.
and invite people to come. And so I put up my trio, a video I'd done of my trio performing, in my dining room with the same damask curtains. Very nice looking video. Helps to have a friend who's a world-class videographer, and just shared that. Said, hey, if you like this, come hang out at our thing. And it blew up because I basically just specified our time zone. There's a lot of, I've sold a few records in Japan, and there's a lot of jazz is very big there.
Yeah.
But they're in the wrong time zone to watch it live.
Mm.
So I just said our time zone, but Facebook directs all your ads to wherever the money's best spent, or so I'm told.
Yeah.
So I wound up with all these folks: Mexico, Central America, Brazil, Colombia, Peru, Argentina. All of a sudden, there's all these people talking to me in Spanish in the chat. And because Facebook's relative, and one fellow who's bilingual confirmed this, Facebook is culturally much newer there. So the novelty is still there that we had in 2008 of clicking everything. And, I sort of peripherally know that guy. So now he's my friend, and I'm going to share this and share that. And they shared that video like crazy.
Oh, that's
and
incredible.
it was exponential. Within, I think the 30,000 thing happened within the first 4 months.
That's incredible.
Mind you, it wasn't 30,000 people watching every night. It just meant 30,000 people liked the video at some point.
Sure.
But I wound up with regulars from all over the world, and from outside the time zone, because there was folks in Australia who would watch it at the crack of dawn. And I have one friend who moved to Dubai, and he'd watch it because he gets up at some crazy hour. I don't know why. But he would tune in as he was like getting ready for work in the Middle East.
Oh my goodness.
So, I reconnected with a lot of in real life friends who I hadn't talked to in quite some time.
Yeah.
And some of them are better pals now than we were when we were in high school.
And there's nothing more that we could ask for, right? I mean, it's an opportunity to come together. But I do have just a couple more questions, to be mindful of your time. But this has been such a blast. And I feel like we're just, reaching the tip of the iceberg here, because there's so much that we can continue to talk. So I hope that maybe we get a chance to talk again in the future and cover some more of these stories, because this has been phenomenal.
Oh, I love that.
So in regards to your career before you became a father, before you had this sort of life, how can you explain what that transition was like because I imagine that your life as a musician was much different than what you're experiencing now as a father and family person?
It's funny. I don't know if this answers the question directly, but I remember we were talking about having kids, and our family can be a little hands off. I'm very waspy. There's nothing. We're so British that I think if I did 23andMe, they'd go, "Oh, there must be some mistake. Nobody is this white." And so I was a little bit worried as a dad, I might be a little like not warm. I'd be a little, like my granddad on my mom's side was almost like Captain Von Trapp, like, with the whistle and military. Of course, the second I met the kid, it was like, oh no, we're good, And I guess if you watch The West Wing, I was like Toby when his wife was pregnant with twins, and he was worried that he wasn't going to be a good dad. And Leo McGarry's like, no, with you, it's a mortal lock. You're good. And that happened with me. But I remember saying to a friend, we were on a corporate gig and we were talking, and he's a dad. And I said, I'm worried that I'm going to resent if I have to make a choice, like here's a good career opportunity, but I can't take it because I've got a kid I'm responsible for. Is it possible I would resent the kid? And he said, no, you're going to always make the decision that is good for your family and your kid, and you're going to be happy to do it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Oh my God, he was right. I think I've mentioned it to him since that. No, that's what you want now. And it hasn't cost me anything. If anything, it's been, if there's any opportunity, it's like, oh, I can't do that because we have this family thing. And because we have a kid, I can't get out of it. I can't think of what that would be. But if it has happened, it's been more than offset by the inspiration. So, and another thing I tell anybody that is going to be a new parent, the thing that nobody told me, and I'm sure it sounds like you've discovered it, is they always talk about, oh, it's going to be so gratifying, it's going to be satisfying, you'll be tired and you'll never watch TV again, and which I watch plenty of TV. but what they will never tell you is that what good company they're going to be.
Oh,
Like just to hang out with your kid and even nobody else.
yeah.
It's like, the people got to remember to share that part. But before I think there might have been about, I was definitely not as good a teacher. I don't teach much. I didn't teach at all back then. I tried it when I was young. And anybody who's met me, including you now, knows that, I can go on. I can ramble. But I like to talk shop.
Yeah.
So if somebody like if we were like, hey, I was listening to your album and it's very cool, and I wish I had that textural or brain for
Oh, goodness.
sounds. But you play. So if you were like, hey, I'd like to know a bit about jazz, I could say, well, if we do this
Mhm.
and put the flat 7 over this and play C
Yeah.
major instead of minor, there's the fundamental language is still in common. We're just
Mhm.
talking about a style.
Yeah.
But if you sent me your kid who doesn't, and they don't play at all yet, I don't know if they do, but if they didn't, I wouldn't know where to begin. And oh, that's middle C. If they say, why is it middle C? I'm like, I don't know. It's been middle C to me for 52 years. I don't remember why it's middle C. It just is. Why is the sky blue?
Yeah.
I know there's a reason, but I've forgotten it.
Oh, goodness.
Um, but having a kid has made me slow down, and because want to make sure she understands. If she asks me a question, I've
Yeah.
got some skin in the game about teaching her well.
Right. Right.
So I need to, I've slowed down and stayed more on point. I'm less inclined to explain all the exceptions to what I'm saying. And just
Right.
here's what you need to know at this point. You can learn the exceptions if you get advanced in this subject.
Right.
So simplifying, focusing, my communication, I think, has gotten a lot better as a kid. And I
Mm.
think that served my music really well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, focus, I would say, like, these
That's
albums
right.
were
Yeah.
inspired by her, and I wanted them because I'm not good at scrapbooking. So she doesn't really have a baby book. So she's got these albums instead. She'll be showing them to people and they're like, what is this silver disc? And she's like, I don't know. It's like, here's a thumb drive instead. But a thumb drive isn't as cute, and you don't get to have the liner notes. So
Exactly. Oh, that sounds like such a beautiful experience, with the liner notes and, to complement the project. But I feel like the focus part of it is so vital, so important. And I feel like I started to be a better artist because I became a dad. But that's been my experience. And,
which of your art forms did it, and did it inspire your music in a very different way than your writing?
So first of all, thank you for taking the time to listen to that, because I have a very difficult relationship with music. I come from a family of musicians. So my dad, is a professional musician, and my grandfather played in mariachi bands in Mexico. And so I was sort of the black sheep in that I went into performing arts, theater, writing, directing, that sort of thing. And so I've always felt like I was not to the level that I needed to be as a musician because of the expectations that I had in my family.
Hmm.
Because they're self-taught, but they're very, they made their living off of that in Mexico, for most of their lives. And so having a child liberated me from so much. And I don't mean to put that much on my child to say, oh, thank you for coming and saving me. But it just allowed me to widen my scope and say, this is the stage of life where I'm at creatively as an artist, and I just have to embrace it and continue to grow. And this sounds so foolish, but I wasn't thinking like that before. So it was very
I can
liberating.
see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is the fact that your kid is going to be your fan no matter what? Does that is like, even
uh,
if your musician family members don't like the album, your kid thinks it's amazing that you made a record.
exactly, exactly. Until he
There's
gets a
that.
little bit older and he takes more after my wife, and then he'll be a good critic, a very
A
steadfast
good
critic.
critic, man. I
Yeah.
told my wife when I started singing, because she sings well and she's got
Yeah.
ears. Uh, I'd play her a little bit of what I was working on nervously, singing a tune, and say, don't ever blow smoke up my butt, because I don't want to hear compliments. I want critiques.
Right. Right.
And because I don't want to go on stage too soon and
Hmm.
try this. and not have it not be ready because you were just being kind. And she said, fine. And then, holy cow, did she ever stick to that? The moment I knew I was going to be maybe okay with the singing was coming back from a senior's home, because they're very kind and I would only sing half the tunes.
Yeah.
And they were just happy to have me. And I would record bits and play her bits, and she'd make sort of the eyebrow would, frown a little bit. I'm like, okay. And then the day she listened and then said to me, nothing about that made me cringe, was the highest praise I'd ever got. In my head, that was like getting a Grammy Award.
Oh yeah.
And after that, I started to relax, and the more I relaxed, the better it got. And the better it got, the audience would respond well. And folks actually saying, oh, could you do this tune? I start playing it. Oh, I was hoping you'd sing it. And I'm like, you did? All right. That, it really, and it took like probably the better part of 5 years for me to really relax.
Oh my goodness.
About it. It was, but speaking of kids, one of the things that really meant a lot was my family. None of us do anything that you wouldn't have expected us to do as when we were young. We all did the obvious thing. My brother was always a good teacher. He teaches. We all, nobody was bad at something and worked until they got good. And that I can think of, at least. My brother's also a cartoonist, and I think it came easily. I'd have to ask him. But I never did anything that didn't, if it was, oh, I'm not good at that. Yeah, I don't want to be doing that. The singing was not good. And I was just hell bent on doing it, adding it to what I was working on, and got, okay at it. And, during early in the pandemic, I think, or maybe even before, just because I was starting to the lessons, but I wasn't singing a lot. Lenny mentioned a particular type of art, drawing, or I forget what she was sketching. And you think I could get a lesson in this? And we said, yeah, of course. And she said, I'm not very good at it, but I think I could be.
Oh.
And it blew my mind. And my wife said, I don't know if she would have thought that way if she hadn't seen you work so hard at learning to sing. Oh, so even if the singing hadn't turned out, and I just went, yeah, this isn't going to, I haven't got the facility, and I went back to sticking to instrumental, that right there would have made all the effort worth it, to have her have a thought, be capable of that attitude that I never was when I was her age.
Oh, that is so phenomenal, and a beautiful note to end on. I think this will be a good time to wrap this one up. But Jim, this has been just an incredible time, and I want to thank you for sharing these beautiful insights, these stories, and reminding me that parenting is just a great, beautiful gift, and it
really is,
for the kindness that you're sharing and bringing into the world through the work that you're putting out there. Thank you so much. This has been such a blast. I really hope we get to chat again and continue where we left off, because this was
absolutely phenomenal. Keep in touch. Yeah. Do you want me to play you off? I don't know if you get this.
That would be
much.
Lovely. Yeah. Yeah.
Just the big ending.